Hello friends, I really intended this just to be a gear review, but because I stayed out there in the cold for a long time, much longer than I anticipated, it turned into a lot more. It's turned into a long video. I had well over an hour and a half of footage that I edited down, and there's a lot about how to keep warm in the cold. There's some stories, there's some philosophies about life. There's a lot in this video, so I hope you can stick with me through it, even though it's a long video, and for a good proportion of it, you're just going to be looking at a blank screen because it's just black and my camera wasn't picking up any light at all. In some ways, then, you might want to treat this more like a podcast, or if you want to watch it through, because I did write a lot of things in there, so there's a lot of additional content just in the writing. If you do it that way, consider, as you watch this video, practicing your peripheral vision. So the entire time you're watching this video, see if you can also be aware of your surroundings, not get locked into that foveal vision when you just stare at a screen. This is a great skill to develop overall in life, is to be in your peripheral all the time. It adds to your awareness, it adds to your sensation of being alive, and you will not stumble through life in the same way if you are open to your peripheral vision. Give it a try. All right, let's go for it. Hello, friends. It's kind of a gray winter day here, and I want to try an experiment. This is to see how these space blankets work, these Mylar space blankets. And I did look on YouTube. There's been a couple of tests of these. And I think there's some things that maybe people could do a little bit better with the way that they utilize them. And I really wanted to test it in kind of a pure sense. So a lot of the people I saw testing, they were pretty bundled up and they were using it over their clothing. I wanted to go out in the winter woods and see, how's this going to work? I'm just wearing my tank top and pants. What I want to do is a scenario challenge here where I'm going to imagine essentially that I was in a car accident, not really hurt, but my cell phone was damaged or there's no cell coverage here. And I was looking through the glove compartment, trying to see if there's something to start a fire with, and found this, one of these super cheapo emergency blankets. And got that in my hand, was looking for more things to kind of be useful in the situation when I smell gasoline and see the light of fire under the car. So get out of that car right away. It's on fire from a gasoline spill. And here I am. I'm out in the woods and I've got this, and that's it. So I don't even have a knife with me. I always carry a knife, but I didn't bring a knife. And I have nothing to start a fire with, nor in this scenario do I have the knowledge or skill to start a fire with raw materials out here. So I'm just going to rely on this. Now this thing is going to, I think, shine as a reflector. So if we have a fire and we use it as a reflector, that's where it's really going to be useful. But is it going to keep me warm, just draped around me? That's what I'd like to find out today in this test. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to stay out until I hit the first stage of hypothermia. Pretty familiar with hypothermia from a lot of my other cold weather experiments. And I'm going to wait until I hit about 95 degrees of core body temp when starting to shake and my teeth chatter. I recently injured my TM joint, so teeth chattering is going to be exceedingly painful for me. So as soon as that happens, I'm going to call this experiment quits. And I also know that I experience some mild cognitive impairment as I start to enter that first stage. Just a little confusion. And because I know it's there, it doesn't affect me, but I can still notice it happening to me. So without further ado, I'm going to open this thing up, and I'm going to confess to you that I've never used one of these before. And so for me, this is an experiment that really follows that scenario. He's a teenage kid and he got this in his hand, and he's just going to use common sense. As I said, I peeked at a couple other YouTube videos, but I didn't look in depth. I didn't read about these or try to figure out what's the best way. Just using common sense experimentation, we're going to give this a try. So I'm going to open this up and bring it out. I think this will double up as a solar oven maybe this summer. One thing I can tell about this right away is that if there's a wind, there was a little bit of a wind earlier. I got myself down in the woods here, so there's not the same amount of wind, but it definitely would cut wind just like a windbreaker would. And it would also be waterproof, so good in the rain. This is how I see a lot of people using it, but you can probably see what the issue is here. Traditionally, we think of losing a lot of heat through the top of our head, but all around our neck. I mean, when I've done hot rock overnights, those are often where I'm holding hot rocks. It's up to my neck, down my groin, under my armpits. We're looking for these places where the major blood flow is going. And so that is going to be a heat loss area. So I'm actually going to take this and put it up over my head like this. Isn't that cute? Now, I can't hear anything, so in any kind of a tactical situation, this would be a supreme disadvantage because I'm almost deaf. Now see how this is just floating around? So I'm losing a lot of heat through here, not because I'm bringing this down for a second so I can hear myself talk. Heat does rise, right? So having it draped out around me, but there's also a lot of flow of air. Even when there's a soft day like this, the air flowing down underneath here is going to flow and mix that air. I'm losing heat trying to explain all this. So to make this more effective, I'm going to be trying to think of how I can seal this in a little bit. And I'm going to bring it down around my butt and tuck it in and see if I can preserve a little bit more heat. As you've probably noticed by now, it's getting darker. And yes, I did this around dusk because I want the temp to drop and for this to get more difficult to do. I'm tucked in here and I'm really thinking about heat loss and heat generation. So even if we have a fire, our body's heat is going to be our most powerful method of retaining heat. If we're clothed, that clothing is going to be holding our heat into us. And so I may end up moving around and generating heat with exercise, with some calisthenics and such. But right now I just want to sit for a while as darkness falls and see how well this keeps me warm, just like this. Now I'm feeling pretty good at this point. I'm sitting down on a log, so my butt is off the ground. This is super essential because I'm going to lose heat through various methods. Convection is one. If the wind was blowing, that's going to steal a lot of heat from me. So one thing I want to think about as soon as I'm worried about going into hypothermia is getting out of the wind. That's super, super essential. But there's also conduction. So that's where heat transfers from a body to a body. And in this case, my butt is sitting on a log and it's losing some heat to the log. I can feel it. I could sit in a squat, which I'm going to do right now. And this is why every bushcrafter should practice their squat, because that squat, now only the bottom of my feet are engaged with the ground. That's the only place there's heat loss. And because I have some boots on, and a lot of people wear shoes, I'm guilty of not doing that a lot, but as long as we have some kind of shoes on, then we're not going to be losing heat to the ground. The squat is also a muscular sort of sit. That is just my dog behind me. He's come out to do this, and of course, no problem for him. Some kind of a goose going overhead. I should be able to ID that. Couldn't quite hear. I had this over my ears. Yeah, spring's coming. And so is the night. Back to that heat loss. So now that I'm in a squat, I'm really not losing heat to that log. Now the wood, granted, is way better than sitting on a rock or sitting on the ground, but it still saps some heat from me. And here I am, I'm squatting. Now I'm using muscles and I'm warming myself up from the inside out. But remember, that warmth, it takes calories. So if I don't have a lot of food in me, hopefully I was at a good party where there are lots of nachos and such before I had my little car accident. So I have lots of calories in me. And those calories can be converted to heat. If I haven't been eating, then I'm going to get cold faster. So I'm in my squat and my knees I'm pressing together, and I'm using that to pinch shut the bottom of the blanket. Even when I just did that, I lost a decent amount of heat. I could just feel it whoosh out. So the key here is to keep a nice seal. If I just open up this a little bit, oh, it's getting hard to see. If I open up this a little bit, I can feel I'm losing heat up through here. I can feel that because I can feel the heat, the cold coming right down through there. So when I put this around my head, I'm pinching it tight under my chin. Now I'm preserving a lot of that heat loss through my head, and it's coming out from my neck. I'm just hang out for a while, okay? And we'll catch up with you in a while. It's been pretty conclusively shown by some YouTubers that these blankets protect you from being seen by thermal imaging. But in that case, they make you invisible. In this case, they're making me visible. Look at that. You can still see me even though it's getting really dark. I'm still doing good, so I'll check in with you in a little while. Hey there, everybody. Checking in. Still pretty warm. And I'll peek back before too long. Well, pretty dark by now. And still warm. When it's light again tomorrow, I'm going to have to show you the method I'm using here, exactly what I'm doing. Because this seems to really be retaining my body heat. Basically, I'm sitting on the log again because I can only sit in a squat for so long. But that did help to keep me warm. So I'm sitting on the log and I have it tucked under my butt. That's not because it's protecting me from losing heat to the log, but it is creating a bubble seal along my back. Then I've tucked it between my legs, and my legs are folded up almost to my chest. And then I've tucked the sides in, kind of, if you can imagine, between my calf and my hamstrings on each leg. So I've created this bubble inside of here in which I am retaining a lot of body heat. And I am being careful about one thing, which is condensation. So if I get wet, even a little bit, it's going to really affect things. So where am I going to have the most condensation from? That's going to be from my breath. So if I would get under here and breathe, I might think, oh, that's going to warm things up, and I'm losing heat from my breath, but it's also going to create condensation in here. But here's a little secret. To prevent that condensation problem, all I'm going to do is about every 10, 15 minutes, and you can tell just by feeling the inside of it, you're feeling for any dampness, because the condensation is going to happen from your body depending on the ambient humidity, the temperature outside, and your stress level. If you're sweating or you're overly hot or you're not relaxed. If I start doing calisthenics, I'm going to create more and more of this condensation. But as I said, there's a super easy magical way to not have to worry about that condensation, and that's that every once in a while I'm going to do this. And even though you can't see me, well, look at that, you can still see me a little bit. You can probably guess what I just did, which was I just stood up, I took it off of me, I really quick flipped it around. So the other side, the outside was now in, inside it was out, and put it back over me. And because I know exactly how I want this thing to be around me to create that bubble, tucked between my knees, tucked under my butt, tucked between calf and hamstrings, and pinched right underneath my chin as it goes over my head. There's no fumbling around. I know exactly what I'm doing, exactly how to get it around me. And here I am. I have to kind of regain the heat bubble, but that's only taking about a minute or two before it starts to feel warm again. Hello again. The temp has definitely dropped. And I can just tell because every time I open this up, there's much colder air that comes into it. But that also means that I'm starting to lose heat. Just to preserve my back, I had to get a little bit more comfortable. So I've just moved this log I was sitting on a little ways, and I'm leaning it up against a tree. Well, I put it right next to a tree so that I can lean up against the tree. No, that is not my hypothermia creating cognitive issues for me. That's just my little bear brain. What did Winnie the Pooh say? Yes. Yes, I'm known for being a bear of very little brain. That's why I'm out here sitting in the woods, getting ready to shiver underneath a plastic blanket in the winter with a tank top on, in case you were wondering. But I've got myself a little more comfortable here, and I'm now stretching out my legs a little bit. Because here's the thing, the squat is awesome, but there's also reduction of circulation. And I don't want my feet to get too cold. And I can feel that they're getting a little bit cold. So by stretching out my legs, I'm allowing better circulation. And when I do that, however, I'm losing a little bit of the really efficient bubble that I've created. As I said, this is a super cheapo, very small space blanket. So if I had a bigger piece of Mylar, I'd have a lot more to work with. But I wanted to run this on, run this experiment with non-optimal equipment, let's just say. Well, kudos to you if you're here just looking at a blank screen. I'm going to make a little light. Look at this. Ooh. You see that? The flashing? Oh, look at that. there's a little visual stimulus for you. Isn't that great? Checking in, temperature still dropping, and I can tell, again, I've experienced this before, that my body it's being strained to keep producing heat, because really the only heat I have here when I'm sitting like this is what's generated from my body without any real muscular contraction. Pretty soon here I'm going to get up and start moving around. I've also noticed something as the temp drops, which is on my shoulder, which you can't see, where this is pressing hard against it. If this is pressed up against my skin tight, it's almost worthless. So if I had just a long sleeve shirt on, then I wouldn't be having this problem. But because it's pressed straight against my flesh, then it's not functioning as an insulative layer. If you think about this, it's working a little bit like a wetsuit. If you've ever done surfing or scuba diving or anything, which leaves a little bit of space between yourself and the material in which water can collect. And then your body heats up that water. So it's the same thing that happens with these. We're trying to trap air so that air can be heated up by our body. And when that happens, we feel warm. But if I leave no airspace, and this is just plastered against my skin, then no insulation is happening. So where I feel that pressed up against me, can't see it, I'm kind of shrugging my shoulders forward and creating some airspace. I can feel that, that's better already. I'm going to do another flip around and make sure I'm not having any condensation problems. Maybe that didn't seem fast to you, but to me it felt pretty quick, and I was able to get back into position. And I have had no condensation issues at all tonight. I think the worst part about this so far for me is that I just can't hear. And I really like to have all my senses at full awareness. Now I can pull this back over my ears, but I notice a fairly significant difference in how much heat is retained if I pull it back over my ears rather than having it really covering most of my face. And again, not so much of my face that I don't want to cover my mouth, because I don't want to create any condensation. But yeah, that's kind of a tough one for me. I like to be aware of my environment. Trying to create a little light show for you here. So again, there's something to see besides just a black screen. I'm seeing stars as they appear and disappear through the clouds above me. You know, one thing about these kind of survival experiments, or in this case a gear experiment, when I do them at night, is that, man, I just love my family. And every night that I get to be part of putting my girls to sleep is super precious to me. But there is something really magical about being out at night. And I'm going to say there's something magical about being out at night on your own. When I was much younger, I was a little bit afraid of the dark. And it wasn't until I did my 3 months in the woods, that was at the Teaching Drum, some of you may know it. I may have given it a different name in Chasing Turkeys when I wrote about it in that book. But there it is. And somehow, well, I actually know about the experience. Maybe I'll share that with you. During that experience, I lost all fear of the dark. And the dark started to feel like my best friend. And since then, it's where I feel safest and most secure is in the dark woods at night. And, usually as I say, I always have a knife on me. But this is particularly nice because I don't have anything with me. And there's something about just being out in a very minimalistic way with not a lot of gear. And it's just you and the experience that you're having. In this case, the beauty of the sky, which I don't think my camera will even pick up because it's just really dark. But I'll try in a second here. We'll see what we see. And it is the cold that's seeping into me, and the beauty of that cold. Because these sensations make us feel so alive compared to the comforts of our society. Sometimes we can just be so over-comfortable. It's our soft beds and our climate-controlled houses and our subtle drugs like coffee in the morning to wake us and a little bit of alcohol at night to mellow us down, and the televisions and the other things that maybe I was having a conversation with a friend about how these, how do we weigh the comfort with also the very strong stimulation that our culture creates. But one thing that just struck me here as I'm sitting in the dark is that hyperstimulation that our culture offers kind of keeps us comfortable sometimes from looking into ourselves. Because if we're always distracted, we don't have to look in and see the parts of ourselves that we're scared of, emotions that maybe we are afraid of feeling, or dark places that we're afraid to observe, memories that we've tried to bury down. We can effectively distract ourselves every day, all day, so that we never have to look inside. We never have to really get to know ourselves or even the people around us. In that way, we can have long-term relationships that are pretty shallow. So what happens if we cease some of that distraction and we take the time to meditate? We take the time to be bored. We take the time to self-evolve, to explore our minds, our emotions, our dreams, our fears, our hopes. There's a lot waiting for us there if we stop being so distracted. Well, this is the unpleasant part of an experiment like this, and that is when I am feeling cold, but I know I'm not anywhere close to that first stage of hypothermia. So this is where the suffering comes in, and I get to spend a good long time just being cold. I'm going to try to enjoy that, because as I was just saying a while ago, it can make you feel alive, really alive, when we experience some discomfort. So I'm going to try to soak into it and just enjoy it. Okay, I'm going to weigh in, and I'm going to say that so far, this thing works pretty well. I'm impressed. It does not work well if it's up against my skin. It does not work well if I would allow any condensation. But if I'm using this bubble method and I am flipping it around, then it's not too bad. I'm unpleasantly cold, but not anywhere close to that first stage of hypothermia. I'm going to report in here. Even through the covering on my ears, I heard something a little bit larger back in the woods. Chances are it's a deer, but I dropped my hood down and wanted to see if I could hear what it was. And I've taken it off my head. I'm calling that my hood. I've taken that off my head, and wow, I can feel such a huge difference. It's off right now, and I'm losing heat exceedingly rapidly. So I'm going to put it back on. Okay, as the temp continues to drop, it's probably a few degrees below 0 centigrade. Well, no, a few degrees below freezing Fahrenheit. So maybe just -1 centigrade or so. But as the temperature drops, this system that I've created becomes much more sensitive. So I've had a couple of times when I just felt an area of my body cooling. And inevitably I'll look down and I've become untucked. Because this is such a tiny blanket, when I had the hood up, or I put this up over my head like a hood, I can barely tuck it around my butt. If I was any taller of an individual, I wouldn't be able to do that. So one thing, if I'm going to carry these, I'm going to look for a larger one, because I'm having to just squeeze every little bit of this material into service. And what that means is that often something becomes untucked and whoosh, there goes the heat. When I'm trying to stay warm long term, I'm going to be pretty greedy with my heat. I've used that word a long time ago when I was talking about keeping your warmth in another video. And what I mean by that is to just imagine that any heat you lose is in finite supply. So I've got only so many calories in me. I've got the brown fat from cold exposure. I've got white fat that I suppose could be burned, but that's, white fat is pretty slow to metabolize. So I have muscular contraction. I have these different methods to generate heat, but it's a finite system. And every time I just crack this open a little bit, I'm losing some heat units. And I want to be really greedy with those heat units, especially if I think I'm going to have to be here for a prolonged amount of time. Now, that being said, in the car crash scenario, if I was just in my tank top, I would have been really cold, really fast in this temperature. But this will buy me hours if I'm using it correctly. Well, still here. One factor that I should have been aware about, but every time I turn on the camera, I have to come out of my cocoon. So there's some more heat loss. Sorry, I just thought I heard something there. I'm uncomfortably cold, but not anywhere close to the hypothermia yet. Night for me is traditionally a time of some really cool encounters. So, raccoons, coyotes, possums, deer, of course. They don't expect humans out in the middle of the night. So they tend to often come right up on you. I don't think in this, because this thing is so loud. Another tactical thought with this is that, oh my gosh, even when I'm holding my breath, it's still making crinkly sounds. And yeah, so it's not very quiet. But if I move around at all, I alert the entire forest. Yeah, I guess that sound was a car engine on a distant road. Sounded a little like a grunt. Okay, I'll share this story with you. And I think I wrote about this in Chasing Turkeys. So if you read Chasing Turkeys, you've already heard this. But this is the experience that really changed how I saw night and actually saw a lot of life. And was at this survival school, and we were taking people out on an adventure. And often people come to ReWild U, and I think, "Oh, you're paying to come and suffer here?" But this was even worse. So people came and they suffered for this mosquito experience. You walk out into this swamp. There's so many mosquitoes, and it was an overnight in the swamp, but you would spend a period of time, and it was different for different groups and different for different people, but you'd spend a period of time out just experiencing the mosquitoes. And I was very youthful and very idealistic, and also pretty fearful. So we were out there and we did the mosquito experience, which just my enthusiasm got me through pretty well. But then everybody else got into tents, and all I had was this dinky little cotton sleeping bag. Remember, it had pictures of deer and maybe a couple other animals on the inside of it. And I can't remember, the outside was just brown, I think. And I don't know how that thing kept me warm through that whole summer. It got wet so many times, but that was what I had. Back then I was just good at sleeping in a crook of a log or just about anywhere. And everybody else got into tents. To my great disappointment, the head teacher there at the time, I'm not going to use any names, but the head teacher there at the time was also using a tent. And which is fine. It's awesome. Tents are awesome. But to my young idealistic self, it was the ultimate sin. And so I sat there so proud in my sleeping bag as the mosquitoes just descended on me for the blood feast. And did they ever have a blood feast? And I kept tucking my head into the sleeping bag and trying to get them away, but it was too hot in there. And then coming out, and they would just be all over my skin. And it was hours of this. Right now, I'm experiencing a long period of cold. That's one thing. It's just a smooth, enduring sensation. But mosquitoes, oh man, they can drive you nuts. And they were driving me crazy, actually insane, just working me into a frenzy of rage in my little sleeping bag. And basically what happened is eventually I just suddenly got to the point where I couldn't take it anymore. And that's when this switch was thrown inside of me. And I suddenly realized that the buzzing of the mosquitoes, that super annoying buzzing, you know it, that super annoying buzzing was just a buzzing sound. It was just a sound in my ears, just a vibration. And the annoying part of it was something that my brain added to it. Otherwise, it was just a buzzing sensation. And when they stuck their proboscis, is that the correct pronunciation, into my flesh for their blood, oh, it hurt. It was terrible. No, it's just a sensation, just a pinprick. And it wasn't even a negative sensation. And it was a moment of seeing exactly, so just sensing exactly what my senses were sensing, and also recognizing how much my mind was layering on to that experience. And in layering onto it, I was essentially living in a world of imagination. Because the horrible pain and the horrible buzzing, that was all imagination. All that really existed was a soft buzzing sound and pinpricks. And that realization, I got out of my sleeping bag and I started wandering off through the swamp that night. It was a very mystical experience. And I was barefoot and wading through water and muck and stuff that just hours earlier would have felt so fearful to me. What if there's something in the muck that's going to bite me? But that was all in my imagination. The real world of the night, at least in all my years of experiencing it, isn't dangerous. There's really nothing out here that's gonna get me in the woods. The only dangers, and often the only unpleasantness, are the things that my mind creates. Otherwise, it's not so bad. Even right now, the cold, as it seeps into me, it's not a horrible sensation. I could make it be suffering. This could super suck right now if I just layered on some imagination, some negative imagination. But I can either A, just experience it as the raw sensation it is, or I can use imagination, think about this, to layer on a positive imagination. So instead of, oh, this sucks, oh, this feels good, this creates brown fat in me. Being out here in the cold, the longer I do this for hours, wow, that's going to be so healthy. It's going to build health-giving brown fat. And now I've added something to it, other than the raw sensory experience, that makes it feel good. It's that simple, I think, in many areas of life. I notice this in family life with children. When they're having emotions, we can write a lot of stories in our minds about those emotions or about their actions. And I can write negative stories, or I can write positive stories. Or we all have the power to step back and just experience the raw sensory sensation and just hear their words. And then we're not so reactive. We don't find ourselves reacting to everything in life, fighting everything in life. Instead, we live life in a different way, and it feels vibrant. Okay, I'm going to sign off for a while. Okay, so maybe I'm not as resilient as I was as a teen. And oh my gosh, my back and my butt, my legs, I'm just going to have to get up and walk around for a while. But I quickly figured out, as I stood up here and pondered doing this, a really nifty little way to preserve my bubble. And of course, I'm going to have to show you in the light, but basically what I've done is I've kept the hood part up around me, and then I just tucked it into my pants all the way around, and I'm puffing it out around me and sealing it up with my hands in front of me, and I have a little bubble wrap around me. So I'm going to go for a walk for a while, keep myself warm, and I'll come back and report in a while. Oh, yeah. Honestly, the part that's getting me coldest is having to use this camera. I'm picking up the tripod right now, and oh, it's cold. I can feel the cold just seeping out through my hands. So I went for a little walk, but I'm going to go for a longer trek. Hope that kind of warms me up, and I'm going to take you with me because I think it'll be a little bit lighter if we get out of the woods. Maybe we can see the sky or see something besides just black. All right, let's go. Oh, the moon's up there, but this is just not catching any light. I thought we'd be able to see something out here. So I am still going to bring the camera along, bring you guys along on this trek, and I'm gonna go for quite a ways using this method and get up higher on the ridge where there's some wind and see how that affects things. And I'll report back when I'm up there. Okay, I'm up here. There's a fair amount more wind, and I'm trying to protect the camera from it so you can hear me. Hopefully there's no wind taking away the sound. Boy, when the wind's there, wherever this is touching my body, it's cold. Really have to concentrate on keeping the bubble around me rather than wrapping it around me tightly. But it's still super impressive. I'm gonna take it off for a second. Oh yeah, instantly, in a second. Instantly major heat loss. So this thing is doing a lot of good. I'm surprised actually. I kind of thought these maybe would not be quite this effective. But yeah, getting colder now that I'm up in the wind. This is definitely different. A good lesson in using natural terrain to make sure you're not getting that convective heat loss. I don't know if you're going to be able to hear what I'm saying right now, but I'm walking straight into the wind at this point, and it's doing a great job of protecting me. Again, if I keep airspace between me and Mylar. So it's a little hard to do when the wind's coming straight on because it presses against the front of me. But in back, it definitely retains the bubble. So I've been walking for quite a while. I'm gonna head back to a sheltered place so I can talk to you better. Okay, back in the sheltered spot. Boy, I had to go pee. And boy, it's a lot of heat you lose, it feels like, when you pee. It's a lot of liquid that you're going out, and it's, you know, it's all pretty warm. So, but as I say, when you gotta go, you gotta go. So I took the Mylar blanket completely off to do that. Wow, so quickly does the heat go when it's just my bare flesh. Even the soft wind movement in this more sheltered area where I am now, it's incredible, my friends, how quickly that saps the heat out of you. If you're brand new to this channel, then welcome. And I think we have, am I right, over 600 videos now, and we try to put a lot of heart into every single one. So there's a whole library of things, bushcraft, things, emotional, mental resilience. There's tons of videos to explore. And we hope you stick with the channel and subscribe and hit that little bell button or whatever it is, and just, yeah, become part of our YouTube family. Our family's life essentially is supported by the patrons who support this channel. So the lifestyle we get to live is, that's why I call it our YouTube family. The lifestyle we get to live is because of all of you. We're really thankful for that. If there were different rules to this scenario challenge, I would have tried to get a fire going, and maybe it would be warmer with the fire than with the Mylar blanket. But for the experiment that we're running here, wow, this thing is performing admirably. The wind's really picking up. That is, whew, that's changing things, definitely. But
This thing's pretty windproof as long as I keep the bubble seal. Oh, the wind through the trees is a lovely sound. Soon it'll be spring and there'll be wind through the leaves. Well, I've snuggled down on some logs to try to get some sleep, and wish I could show you this. I really should have brought a little flashlight along, but what's happening is that I'm getting some rips in this fabric, and once the rip starts, it just keeps going with just the barest touch. So I'm not sure if this is true with all Mylar or if it's just the super cheap one here, but it is profoundly affecting my ability to keep the heat inside. Yeah, I've got a pretty fatal rip here, and it's causing a big hole. I'm trying to close it off, but it's, if it makes sense, it's taking a lot of material to create an overlap there, and that's pulling material up away from my legs. So wind and dropping temps and this big split, it's definitely starting to catch up. I still have a long way to go before I hit stage 1, but it's colder. Definitely getting colder. So this is very compromised at this point, and yeah, I'm getting chilly, so I'll check back in a while. At last, the moon is bright enough you can see it up there. Well, I'm at my end, folks. My thing is shredded almost in half, and I'm definitely probably still not quite to that stage 1, but I'm really close. So the wind's picked up, temps down, my thing is shredded. It's time to call the challenge over, but I will show you right after this exactly how I use this to stay warm this long. Let there be light. So it's light again. I want to show you these methods that I used. Really windy, so hopefully you're going to be able to hear me. It's a lot tougher in the wind. So I'm going to sit down on it, and I've got some wings here. This one's going to come down and get tucked into my legs. This is going to get tucked into my legs. This wing is going to go between my calf and my hamstring. Same thing on this side. This goes over my head. I'm pinching this under my chin, and I'm closing this door right here. Not great posture because this thing's so small. And then you can see where my shoulders are making this tight. That's where I can feel the cold and the wind coming through. So all I'm doing is I'm shrugging my shoulders a little bit and getting my skin away from that. Now I've got a pretty good bubble going on, and right away I can feel the warmth difference. Making sure right down here, maybe I have a little hole. I can tuck this under my butt. And this is another hole, securing that down and around. So as I get into position here, I'm trying to close every little teeny door. And when I got up and walked around, all I did was I took this
and I tucked it all the way around into my waistband. Still up over my head, but now tucked in all the way around. And then I secure that front door. This needs to really be up under my chin. It can't just be like this, because I can feel the cold air. I want to seal that almost uncomfortably tight. And again, if my skin is pressed straight against it, not good. So I'm tucking myself in and leaving some air. All right, my friends, that was the space blanket experiment. It was fun, it was enlightening, I learned a lot. Hopefully you did too. Thanks for coming along on the journey with me. Share in the comments your experience with these, and if you carry one in your EDC or backpacking, what do you think of them? All right, we'll talk with you in the comments. Love to you all.